Greetings and welcome to the Prometheus Project podcast. I'm your host, Richard Best. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of creativity. So for this episode, I'm going to talk about something that I love. Music. Music has always been a part of my life. When I was a kid, I had this little portable turntable in a green case. I could close it up like a suitcase and take it anywhere. And I had a stack of 45s I would listen to over and over again. Mostly singles from the late 1950s and 1960s. Hand-me-downs from my older siblings and family members, friends. But man, I would spend hours in my room listening to those songs, learning the lyrics, tapping my feet, dancing. The music was mostly bubblegum pop, golden oldies. But it was a good introduction to a lifelong obsession. When I got a little older, my siblings allowed me to start listening to more modern music. The Beatles, Stones, Springsteen, Chicago, Steely Dan. I was overwhelmed by the sensory input. I would lay on the floor in front of the turntable with headphones on, read the liner notes, and study the lyrics. And I think that's one of the things that got me started on writing, reading lyrics. Now, I was already an avid reader and had been exposed to a variety of books, stuff like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, Shel Silverstein, Hardy Boys. And yet my other obsession, dinosaurs, had me reading books about them as well. But there was something about poems set to music that really caught my attention. It wasn't long after that I started taking guitar lessons. The neighbor across the street was a music teacher and her son was my age, so I spent a lot of afternoons at their house when my father was at work. Of course, this then exposed me to other music and other instruments. Jazz and classical were soon spinning in my head. But it wasn't quite the same as the rock music I'd been listening to and didn't have the same lyrical impact. I mean, most jazz I heard was instrumental, and of course the same goes for classical. And I never quite got into opera. But the thing is, music was in my head, and I've never been able to get it out. Tempos, rhythms, the sounds of all weaving together into this tapestry of sound. It mesmerized me. I got into the habit of listening to individual instruments during a song. For example, on the first pass, I'd listen to the guitar. On the second listen, I'd focus on the keyboards or the piano. Then maybe the bass or the drums, then the vocals. I think that listening to music like this helps to understand structure, how things work together. It's not unlike other art forms where the artist has to build their work layer by layer. Painting's a perfect example of that. A painter uses different colors and brush strokes, building one on top of another to create a final image. With writing, the writer has to weave together characters and plot, settings and dialogue, narration, pacing. I feel that music is often underappreciated as an art form, although it's probably the most popular form of art. What I mean is that just about everyone listens to music. We have it playing in our cars when we're driving around town or playing in our offices while we're at work. We listen to it while exercising or doing chores around the house. But while so many people have music playing during their everyday lives, I don't think people pay that much attention to it. At least, not like I mentioned a few moments ago. To most people, in my opinion, music is the soundtrack to their lives, but they don't necessarily appreciate the artistry involved. The truth is, music affects us on a deep level. Think about it. We use music to motivate ourselves. When we get up in the morning, do you prefer to hear soft ballads or something upbeat? Generally, people want something upbeat to get them moving. I can't listen to a Whitney Houston love song while I'm trying to wake up in the morning. I need something like Sam and Dave's Hold On, I'm Coming. I need electric guitars, drum beat, fancy bass. Along similar lines, I often have music playing no matter what I'm doing. Mowing the yard, I'm probably jamming to some Van Halen. Vacuuming the house, probably have some Metallica blasting. Sitting down to write, then I'll probably have some acid lounge or lo-fi hip-hop playing softly in the background. Unwinding at the end of a long day, there's probably something softer, maybe Bjork or Alan Parsons Project. I listen to music to suit my mood, or sometimes to adjust my mood. Like if I'm down, I may listen to something upbeat to lift my spirits. If I'm too amped up, I'll listen to something softer to try to take the edge off. When I'm feeling creative or artsy, then I'm listening to, King Crimson or Miles Davis. My tastes are all over the map. Music is a powerful medium. Consider the fact that music can also transport us to the past. You know, like when you hear that song that helped you get through the sophomore year of high school. You hear it 10, 15, 20 years later, and you're transported back to those days. You remember those feelings, maybe the freedom of being a teenager, or maybe that undefinable angst that weighed on you. You may remember a first kiss, a first dance, the night you lost your virginity. It's all about association. Music has the unique power to transform us, to make us feel, to make us think, to make us remember. There's a song that came out when I was in high school, and I may have been a sophomore when it was released, so I was probably, 15 years old. But it's one of those songs that sticks with you. It's called Analog Kid by the Canadian band Rush. The lyrics are about a young man who is filled with longing, who wants to get away and explore the world, who feels there's something more somewhere else. I could relate to that song. It was me, laying in the grass, watching hawks soaring overhead. At the time, I felt that song was written for me, for that moment in my life. It summed up my feelings. Now fast forward to 35 years later. I still listen to that song every now and then, and it still affects me, probably even more now than it did then. Now it reminds me of the boy I used to be, the feelings I used to have, the way I felt, and the things I wanted to do. But even more so, that one line about laying in the grass and staring at the sky, it gets me right in the feels. I remember how content I was doing that, alone in a field surrounded by the sounds of nature, thinking about that fawn-eyed girl. It's a mixture of melancholy and fond memory. But the emotion, the feeling, is so strong it almost takes my breath away. There's another song, Bruce Springsteen's Thunder Road. That one came out when I was much younger, maybe 8 or 9. While I hadn't yet experienced romantic relationships yet, the song's lyrics were so vivid that they stuck with me. It's still one of my all-time favorites. Whenever I hear it, I think back to laying on the floor in the living room of the house we lived in, headphones on, reading the lyrics as Springsteen growled them in my ears. A story of love and loss, of missed opportunities, of looking for something better. Another one that hits the emotion button in my head. I'm sure that you have songs like that in your life, songs that motivate you, inspire you, make you remember, feel. I find that music does so much for me. Music is one of the things that inspired me to write. My first attempts at poetry were basically attempts to write lyrics for the songs I'd heard in my head. Going even further, those story songs like the aforementioned Thunder Road or Bob Dylan's Tangled Up in Blue or even Rush's Red Barchetta have all inspired me as a writer. I find it amazing that someone can tell a story in 4 or 5 verses. Hell, I have a hard time telling a story in 4 or 5 pages. But then, music is unique in that it's sort of a mixture of words and sounds, and combined they paint a picture. Either a literal one in the case of the story songs, or metaphorical in how the song affects us emotionally. It's a combination of art forms swirled together. Think about that for a moment. 2 or 3 minutes of words and music can make you smile, make you cry, take you on a trip to the past, or stir your imagination, make you think of possibilities. That's power, my friend. That's art. I've mentioned before that I play some guitar, a bit of piano, and I've written some music. Nothing I'm especially proud of, but it's something fun to play around with. I hear music in my head all the time, and I try to bring it to life, but it's simple music, just a few instruments, nothing complicated. And surprisingly, I've yet to write lyrics to accompany any of the music I've created. And it's not for lack of trying, I just don't know if I'm at that level yet. But man, I am so impressed when I listen to music, especially on headphones, and think about how someone or a group sat down and wove all those pieces together to create a song. For example, listening to just one instrument throughout a song allows you to hear just one thread in the tapestry. Alone, it may sound fine, but nothing amazing. Then you add another instrument, drums for example, and now there are 2 threads, and there's the beginning of something interesting. Add a third instrument, maybe some bass guitar, and suddenly the song begins to take shape. The thing that gets me is when one musician comes up with one song all by themselves. Hearing all those pieces, weaving them together, polishing it up, blows my mind. Classical is a perfect example. Think about it. Mozart and Beethoven heard all that in their head. All those strings, the brass, the wind instruments. It's not unlike a painter who sees that finished work in their head, but they have to figure out how to get all their colors the right way to make it come to life. So yeah, music is a huge part of my life, and I listen to just about everything. Classic rock, jazz, blues, big band, classical, electronica. But sometimes it's overwhelming to think about all that music out there that I'll never hear. I read somewhere that a person can pick a genre of music in a time period, say 1950 blues, and they'd be able to listen to just that genre from that time period and never hear the same song twice. Basically, I could listen to 1960s jazz for the rest of my life and never have to hear the same song. That's amazing. So here's your suggested challenge for this week. Find some music to listen to. I suggest an album from one of your favorite musicians, singers, bands. Load it up and listen to the entire thing from start to finish without distraction. No playing on your phone, no surfing the net on your pad, no flipping through magazines. If you need to have something in hand, find the lyrics or read and sing along. But really listen to the music. Headphones are best for this. And like I suggested earlier, you can try to listen to just one instrument in some of the songs. Just the drums, just the vocals, just the keyboards, or maybe just the backup singers. I think you'll notice nuances you've never heard before, and maybe you'll find a deeper appreciation for the music. But mostly, I'd like you to simply listen to a full album from start to finish with no distractions. This is taking the music from background noise to something up front and center. Think of it this way. You probably have some piece of art on a wall where you live. A Van Gogh print, or maybe a photo by Ansel Adams. You put it up there because you loved it when you first saw it. But when was the last time you stopped and looked at it and appreciated it? Music is the same way. It's almost always playing in our lives, but how often do we really sit down and appreciate it? Well, if you do this, please contact me and let me know how it went. Well, that's about it for this episode. As always, thank you for listening, and I'm always open to hear from you, suggestions, comments, maybe how you did with one of these little challenges I throw at you. Feel free to contact me through my website, richardbiss.com. There's a contact form, or you can maybe find me on Twitter. With that said and done, do something creative this week. I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.